first and foremost, I really do want to say I'm sorry that I couldn't be there tonight. Ian and I had talked about this for months, and I've wanted to be there, and I've been looking forward to it and planned what I wanted to talk with you guys about. And then last night something came up that I'm really excited about. And I never say unfortunately because it's not unfortunate. It's actually very fortunate. My son gets an opportunity to play varsity football as a sophomore, and I made a commitment to him that I would be there for his games. And so unfortunately that this got canceled, but fortunate that I'll be able to get to see my son play. I really just first and foremost just want to thank you for understanding and making the right decision. Not all decisions are easy. And even though you have two good options, sometimes you have to choose, and it just kind of sucks that one plays out the way it does. But what I wanted to share with you today is something that I really haven't talked a lot about in depth publicly. For obvious reasons, it's very personal. But as I've been talking with Ian about what I wanted to share with you, I can't really think of a better place than to share some of my own personal struggles. And I'm not here to beat on my chest or toot my own horn or tell you how wonderful I am. If anything, I'm here to tell you the exact opposite, that I've struggled in so many different ways. And I know many of you can probably relate to that. And as I went through my own personal struggles with alcoholism and divorce, I really thought that as I shared these things, it was the end and the demise of the business and the movement Order of Man that I had created. I built this movement and this organization on the back of believing in the nuclear family, the back of believing that men should be disciplined and committed and driven and focused. And all the things that I've been experiencing over the past year and a half, quite honestly, are the antithesis of that. So as I begin to share some of my own personal struggles with alcohol abuse and then ultimately the demise of my marriage, my 18-year marriage, I really thought that people were going to turn away and people were going to mock and ridicule and call me a hypocrite and worse. And some of that happened, to be frank. Some of that did happen. But an interesting and surprising development took place, and that is that I began to see that as I shared my own personal struggles, it gave permission for people to do the same. And guys that were very, very close to me began to share with me their own personal struggles with drug abuse and alcohol abuse or any other sort of addiction, whether it was pornography or gambling or any other vice that they may have found themselves susceptible to. And then they talked to me about their own personal struggles in their relationships. And what I found is that through our own trials and struggles, we can isolate and we can pretend that we have everything figured out and we can put on the front, as many of us do. I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs and you're expected to lead in your business and lead in your communities and lead in your homes. And there is an expectation of that. And you should be doing that. But if you're putting on a false appearance, a face, a facade of what really is happening in your life, you're not allowing anybody to experience the benefit of the learning experiences that you've had. And all the things that we've gone through, both positive and especially negative, are nothing more than learning experiences and opportunities for us to grow. It's hard to come to terms with that in the midst of horrible circumstances. Your wife or husband says they don't want to be married to you anymore. Maybe you're in a lawsuit. Maybe you're facing financial struggles or a medical diagnosis that you're dealing with. It's hard to imagine that in the midst of that, you can actually use that as fuel, not only to grow in your own personal life, but to serve others. And what I found as I began to share some of my own personal struggles is the sharing of those struggles gave me a new sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in my life, because I saw that there was other people who were positively impacted by a message that I was really embarrassed to share and ashamed to share as well. So that's all to lead up to what I wanted to tell you. Many of you know that I have an organization called Order of Man. I started Order of Man in 2015. And again, I only want to share this with you so hopefully you can see that or maybe feel a little bit of your own story in what I have to share with you. It's not for me, it's for the benefit of you. And I hope that's the way it comes across. I started this movement and it rapidly grew into one of the largest men's organizations on the planet. And we dedicated all of our time and energy and resources and everything that we had to giving men the tools and guidance and direction and accountability they needed to thrive in their lives. And we did that. We've been very, very successful. So successful that I began to become very overwhelmed because I wasn't really taking time for myself. I was pouring so heavily into other people. And I derived all of my value in this world on what I could create for other people. And I started to drink, and it was nice. It was really nice, actually. I was a bit of a heavy drinker right out of high school, and I gave that up for about 18, 15, 16, 17, 18 years. And then I started to drink, and one drink a week to just relax and take it easy and put my feet up and disengage for an hour or two turned into one drink a night. And then that turned into two drinks a night. And then that turned into let's drink during the day. And that turned into let's wake up in the morning and drink. And it was so nice until it wasn't, to have this temporary reprieve from the demands that I had placed on my own shoulders, the expectation that I felt like I had to be this perfect person and live this perfect life, and not really have any of my own struggles. And so for me to be able to disengage was mentally and emotionally welcomed. I got to the point, my drinking over the period of 2.5 years, where I would go to the store in the morning and I'd get a half a pint or a pint of whiskey, and I would literally sit in my driveway and I would drink a half pint of whiskey before I'd even go in the morning and quote unquote start my day. And as soon as that wore off, I'd go back to the store and try to get something else to get drunk. And so I was either drunk, hungover, or passed out about 24/7 for a period of, I would say, 5 to 6 months. I was disengaged from my business, but more importantly than that, I was disengaged from my family. I was disengaged from my wife. I was short with them. I wasn't having fun. I wasn't leading them the way they deserved to be led, the way that I promised that I would. I fell into these patterns, and it's interesting. I put so much responsibility on my shoulders, and it's really hard to wrestle even today with the idea that I've been proclaiming the way that we should live, all the while having my own personal struggles. And some will say it's hypocritical, and you might think that. And in some ways, I think it is, but it's not that I didn't believe in the message that we were sharing. It's that in my own life, I failed to implement it to the degree that I could. And isn't that the great irony of life, is that we know what we should be doing, and yet so many of us struggle to figure out why we can't do what we know we should be doing. If you take it in any other context of life, take finances. Everybody knows if we strip everything else away, you've got to make as much money as you can and spend less than you make. That is the key to financial prosperity. And yet, many people are still broke. When it comes to being strong and being fit and being healthy, it's burning more calories and consuming less. We all know that. And yet, a bag of chips and salsa sounds pretty good right now. So it's not that we don't believe in what we're sharing. It's that we find it so difficult, even when we do unequivocally know how important it is, to be able to live that ourselves. And I'm going to share with you guys some of the strategies that I've employed in my life to help me get back on track. But to speed this story up a little bit, I spent about a couple of years being drunk or passed out or hungover. And one morning, my ex-wife came to me. I think actually we were talking, and I wish I could relay the exact conversation. I can't, because I was probably drunk. And she had said something, and it took me by surprise. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but I said, "Wait, are you leaving me?" And she said, "Yeah, I am." And she wanted a divorce because of the way that I had showed up for 2 years. That was July 31st of 2022. So last year, about a year and a half or so now, she said she wanted a divorce. Now, we lived in Maine with my 4 children at the time. We're originally from Southern Utah, which is where I am now. And I spent about 5 months, 4 or 5 months, doing everything I could to salvage the marriage. I went to AA a day or two after she had this discussion. I hired a therapist to begin to work through some of my issues so I can deal and confront with my alcoholism. But by the time that she told me that, she had already been done. It was too little, too late. And so we ended up moving our family back across the country, and she lives 3 or 4 miles down the road from me, and I live here in this place. And it's been a real hell of a year, to be honest with you. I don't like sharing that. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about my own deficiencies. I don't want to talk about my temptation with alcoholism. I don't want to talk about the destruction on my part of my 18-year marriage. I don't want to talk about, excuse me, hold on. I don't want to talk about my kids growing up without a father figure permanently in their house. I don't want to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about it because these are the things that need to be shared. And these are the things that need to be shared with, I think, successful people. Those of us who are hard chargers and driven and ambitious and motivated and maybe even obsessed tend to find vices that we can't dabble in. I don't dabble in drinking. People say, would you like a drink? No, I don't want a drink. I want all the drinks because that's my mentality and that's my attitude. But I know where it leads me. And it leads me to a path that puts other people in harm's way. It breaks down the things that are important to me. And so the reason I'm not here with you, part of the reason is because I reevaluated my life over the past 14, 15, 16 months now and decided that I've got to do some things different. I was chasing so many things with regards to business opportunities and the ideal perfect version of myself that I began to erode and self-destruct. And so I'm here because I want to watch my son play football. And that's more important to me than just about anything else. I think what's important to know, though, as you think about, hopefully you're looking at your own life through the lens of mine, and you're asking yourself, what are you dealing with? Is it alcoholism? Is it obsession towards something that is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things? Is it, the way that you grew up and the way that you handled trauma or stress? And how would you like to handle that? And I think what you have to ask yourself is, what choice am I going to make now? I've had a lot of people, and again, this is not to toot my own horn, but I've had a lot of people ask me, Ryan, you seem to have recovered so quickly from your divorce. First and foremost, you don't know. You really don't know that. Anybody who's gone through a divorce knows how horrible it is. And for the most part, yeah, things are okay. And her and I have a good working relationship with our kids and things like that. And my business is doing well and I feel good about where I am from a physical perspective. But man, there's a lot of lonely nights and weekends that I just think about all the damage that I've caused. So I don't want anybody to think ever that I just got over this quickly, but I will tell you that I feel pretty happy with my progress. And part of the reason is because I decided to make a choice when I was confronted with something that wasn't going right in my life. I could have self-destructed even further. I could have turned back to the bottle. I could have blown up my family. I could have been a total asshole to her. I could have disowned my children. I could have got drunk and drove somewhere and killed somebody or killed myself. I could have even become suicidal. Those are all decisions that people make. And I don't know where people are when they're making those decisions, but I knew where I was, and that wasn't a decision I had the luxury of making. I had 4 kids, still do, that care about me, that love me, that need me as their father. I've got literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are impacted by the work that we're doing, and I don't have the luxury of self-destructing. And that's the difference between people who are successful and people who are unsuccessful. It's not that the successful ones are free of any hardship or trial and adversity. It's that they make decisions in the moment to overcome, to use those as learning opportunities, to use those as growth experiences, and to change the trajectory of their life for the better. And that's what I decided to do. But it's amazing to me how often when you decide to make a choice like this, and you need to be very, very aware of this. Some of you, I can't see you right now, but some of you are probably nodding up and down. If you're not doing it physically, maybe you're doing it inside and you're thinking, man, this guy's telling my story. I only know that because of how many people have told me this. And you might be thinking that. What I want you to know is that there's going to be a lot of people around you who are vested in the old version of you, the drunk version, the loser version, the pathetic version, the unhealthy version. They're vested in that. But why would anybody be vested in that? Because it gives them permission to act the same. And you really have to consider and evaluate who's in your life, because if they're vested in you being an inferior version of yourself, that's not somebody that you can entertain and have in your life. I've had to deal with so much feedback and criticism and hostility even over the past year and a half, but those are people I don't want in my life. If you have a vested interest in me being an alcoholic, you can get out of here. I'm not interested in that. If you have a vested interest in kicking me while I'm down, going through one of the most difficult times of my life, you can get out of here. I'm not interested in that. But you know what? If you look to your left and your right and you look in front and behind you right now, I think there's probably 85, 90, 100 people. I don't know how many people are there tonight. If you look around, those are people who are likely to have a vested interest in you succeeding. Because if you succeed, then it whittles away and it removes any sort of excuse they have for not succeeding. But you have to be real about this, is that not everybody is going to want you to win. And it's up to you to identify who that is. I said something several months ago, and I think it's really important, and it's summed up this way, is that not everyone who praises you is your ally, and not everyone who criticizes you is your enemy. That's one of the hardest things to acknowledge and recognize. Not everybody who praises you is your ally. I found that to be true. People would talk so highly about me and say how wonderful things were. And I would call these individuals up and I would say, man, I'm struggling. I'm dealing with this. I'm having a hard time. And they told me they were my friends, and yet they were unwilling to tell me the truth about how bad it had gotten and what I actually needed to hear from people. And then I had others who would criticize me, and they would poke at me, and they would mock, and they would criticize. And I had some who would criticize. And when everything went to shit, those individuals are the ones who called me, and some of them texted me, and they said, what can we do to help? We're here to serve you. That ability to discern who is your friend, who is your ally, and who is your enemy is crucial. And it's not always based on who's praising you or who's criticizing you. It takes something a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some symptoms that you can be aware of as you might be dealing with your own adversity. I think these are symptoms I wish I would have acknowledged earlier, because if I did, or if somebody who had shared those with me, then maybe I would have seen the error of my ways earlier and been able to salvage my marriage and a better relationship with my kids. I wrote a book in 2018 called Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. And guys, it is a battle. Every single day is a battle. You're struggling to grow your business. You're struggling to lead your families. You're struggling to be influential in the community. Whatever your mission is, that's a battle. It's internal, it's intrinsic, it's external. There's all these forces at play and work against you. And it's really important that you maintain your sovereignty. And sovereignty, if you were to strip everything else away from what that word means, is the ability to do what you want, when you want, why you want. And every single day we're confronted with choices that limit our sovereignty. So many people will give away their sovereignty to employers, for example, because they want that paycheck. And at the same time, they may be asked to do something that goes against their morals. And so what do if all they can do is rely on a paycheck because they have a mortgage to pay and kids that they need to feed? Well, they're going to jeopardize their morals. So isn't it crucial then that we learn to become financially sovereign, free of the influence of other people? So if an employer, for example, comes to you and says, hey, I need you to do this thing, and it jeopardizes your morals or values, you can say, no, I'm not going to do that. And you can walk away in comfort knowing that you may not have that steady paycheck, but at least you have your principles, at least you have your honor, and at least you have your integrity. You think about it with fitness and health. You know, how many of us are 30, 40, 50 pounds overweight? We're dealing with medical conditions that we should not be dealing with because we've created it for ourselves. And now we're beholden, we're enslaved to pharmaceutical companies and doctors who we know are not serving our best interest. And yet we're paying 300, 400, 500, sometimes 1,000 more a month just for that little pill, when all it really takes is for you to go to the gym every single day and start eating a little better than you have over the past decade of your life. That's sovereignty. That's what you need. Now, look, I realize that we're trying to serve other people. I think it's noble and righteous to lead, to serve, and even to sacrifice for the people who are relying upon you. But you can't do that unless you're sovereign. You can't do that unless you're taking care of yourself. And last year, it was brought to my attention that I had lost control. A sovereign man doesn't enslave himself to alcohol. I wrote a damn book on it. And yet I still was susceptible to that. So here's some symptoms I want you guys to be aware of as we're thinking about how you might be relinquishing your sovereignty maybe even unknowingly. Number one, arrogance. You're arrogant. You think you know it all. Man, I was so arrogant a year and a half ago. I thought I was the king of the world. I was on top of everything, millions and millions of podcast downloads, people who were buying our merchandise and sharing our stuff and clinging on to every word that I had to share. And I had elevated and propped myself up to a place I did not belong. I put myself on a pedestal. And I'm here to tell you, if at any point you either vocalize or internalize the concept that you got this all figured out, you're about to get kicked in the balls. You really are. And you better be aware of that. If any of you tonight are thinking, I don't need to be here, I know what this guy's going to say, I know what these people are going to share, I've got this all figured out, they could learn something from me, you better tread lightly because something's going to happen. I remember thinking years ago, I was worried because everything was going so well. The business was growing, the family dynamic was wonderful, finances were in order, my health was in a good place. And I remember being scared, thinking, this is too good. This is too good. Like something's going to happen. But in my mind, I could not fathom what would happen. And I never would have imagined what it was, what ended up happening, but it did all the same. We need to be vigilant against ego and arrogance and remember that we don't have it figured out, that we can be constant learners and that we can grow every single day. Sometimes people will ask me, I've interviewed over 460 successful men now. Ian's one of those men. And sometimes people will ask me, who's the best podcast? What's the best podcast you've ever done? Or what have you learned the most from? It's a hard one for me to answer. I have my personal favorites, of course, but I try to learn something from everybody because everybody has a lesson to teach you, regardless of where they are on the hierarchy of your metric of choice, economic status, physical stature, et cetera, et cetera. Number two, isolation. We cannot isolate. And that's what I was doing. I had this organization of literally hundreds of thousands of men. We run an exclusive brotherhood called the Iron Council, and we had 15 or 1,400 people at the time. These are all men who are motivated and ambitious. And I was telling them, hey, band with other guys, talk with other guys, be accountable, create brotherhood, tell them what you're going through, share with them what you've learned. And yet I wasn't doing it for myself. I began to isolate. And part of that was my arrogance. I believe because I was doing so well, nobody understood my challenges. Nobody got me. Nobody understood what I was possibly going through at the time. And that isolation isn't sustainable. I hear it all the time. Guys are like, oh, I'm going to do it myself. You can't trust other people. Number one, that's arrogance. And number two, you're beginning to isolate and you can't solve problems on your own. I don't care if you're a creationist or an evolutionist. Human beings are not designed to live life alone. We're supposed to do it in tribes. We're supposed to do it in packs. We're supposed to talk about our issues with each other. Too many of us are spending time talking about the weather or the game or fantasy football. I don't give a shit about any of that. What I care about is what I'm personally struggling with and what you're personally struggling with so I can figure things out. Like I need to know what you've been through so I can learn from you. You need to know what I've been through so you can learn from me. We cannot isolate. As I went through my divorce, there was a lot of isolation. There's been times where I've literally feel like I've had to drag myself by my own collar out of the house to go be social when I don't want to. I just want to cry and like wallow in my own self-pity. But I know that doesn't lead anywhere good. That doesn't lead anywhere healthy. Instead, it leads me to desperation, depression, anxiety, and potentially even suicidal thoughts. Guys, get around other people. Number three, stagnation. If you feel yourself reaching some sort of pinnacle or reaching some sort of plateau, then you really need to be aware of what's going on. Sometimes when we become successful, we rest on our own laurels and we begin to believe that just because we've had success, that success will continue. It won't continue. What got you here isn't what's going to get you there. And there's no coast, right? There's no default mode where you can just put it on autopilot and hopefully all of your success will carry you to something else. That's what happened to me. I grew stagnant. I grew complacent. I thought I had it all figured out. I'm like, cool, I got this all on lock. All my systems are automated. I'm good to go. I can check out. I can tune out. I can do whatever I want. And then, of course, you can see where the results led us. The next one, burning out. And we go hard, don't we? You guys are all successful people, guys and gals. We're all successful here. You wouldn't be here if you weren't successful in your own right. And so we go hard. And because we go hard, we forget to take care of ourselves. We're worried about focusing on others. We're worried about our bottom line. We're worried about the employee who might be dealing with something. We're worried about our wife or our husband or our kids. And we're just pouring into everybody else. And then eventually we come to realize that our tank is empty. That's where the burnout happens. We've got to find ways to disengage from those things, and we've got to find ways to take care of ourselves on a daily basis. That could be working out, that could be meditation, that could be a hobby or an activity or something that you're interested in. Maybe trying something new, maybe going on an intentional vacation, but doing something so that you can refuel the tank so that you're not going to burn out and crash and burn and hurt yourself and other people. And the last point that I would say here as a symptom is a loss of meaning and significance. If this goes away, that's like a red light indicator on your dashboard saying, hey, something's going, the check engine light. If you're feeling like you have no more meaning or significance in your life, it's time for you to start to change things up, because that's an indicator that you're going to crash and burn. You haven't yet, but you might if you don't address the issue, and don't address the problem. These are all symptoms we need to be aware of. And really what I want to do now is talk with you about the solution, because I don't want to just rain on your parade as we start this evening, but let's talk about the solution. I hope you can take notes. I hope you've got a pen handy. Somebody earlier was mentioning to take notes, and I think this will be helpful. So the solution to this, the solution to maintaining your sovereignty and the solution to getting yourself back on track is I have. And although there's still a wake of collateral damage in my path that I'm working to repair, I'm on the path to doing so because of these solutions. Number one, having a vision for yourself. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm not with you guys physically, because I have a vision. All of the decisions I can make on a daily basis are measured against a litmus test of a vision. If I didn't have that vision about rekindling and reconnecting with my children in a way that I haven't over the past couple of years, I'd probably be there with you. And that would not be advantageous for them, and that would not be good for me. Might be good for you because I'd be there, but it wouldn't be good ultimately for what I want and what I have a desire to do and who I'm meant to serve, which is my children. So if you don't have a vision and you aren't thinking about that on a daily basis, I would highly, highly encourage you to draft, to journal, to focus, to take time every day to think about how life could be. What kind of man or woman do you want to be? When this type of man or woman comes across this a negative situation or a circumstance, how does that kind of person behave? I thought about that a lot with my marriage. You know, I could have turned into a real asshole towards her. I could have smeared her. I could have thrown her under the bus. I could have done all sorts of things because of the platform I have. And I made a commitment early in the divorce process that I would never speak negatively about her. I actually don't have, even if I wanted to, I don't have a lot to say negative about her. She's a wonderful woman. But I decided to take a higher road, but that was deliberate. Don't for a second think that I didn't want to smear her. Don't for a second think that I didn't want to put all the blame on her about the demise of our relationship. Of course I wanted to do that, but I made a decision that I'm going to take the high road, that I'm going to be the type of man that looking back on this situation, that I would be proud of becoming. And that's something you can do when it comes to your vision. A lot of times people will ask me, hey, Ryan, I've got this job offer and I make a little bit more money, or let's say it this way. I've got this job offer and I'd make a little bit less, but I'm going to travel a lot more and then the income is higher. Or I can stay here. I'm not quite as satisfied, but I'll be home with my family. What should I do? I can't answer that question for you. Only you can answer that. But a frame of reference is to fast forward 30 years. Looking back over your life, back to the decision that you're making today, 30 years from now, which decision will you be happy that you made? Which decision will you be happy that you made? This is a vision exercise. When things go wrong, what kind of man or woman you're going to be? How are you going to show up? How are you going to serve others? When things don't go your way, when you have opportunities to do things that go against your morals or your better judgment, what are you going to do? You have to make those decisions now. How many times have you heard from people, for example, who will say things like, I had an affair and I just lost myself in the moment. You shouldn't have lost yourself in the moment, because you should have been aware of what you would do in those circumstances when they presented themselves. This is why we need to spend so much time focusing on what we want and who we want to be. Next is executing. You know, when I talk to people about their vision, a lot of people say, well, I want to make more money. Great. We all want to make more money. What exactly does that mean? How much money? How are you going to make that money? What are you going to do with that money? How are you going to pay taxes on that money? How are you going to invest it? These are things that you need to be aware of. So as you're jotting this down and you're thinking about these things throughout the evening, and I'm sure other presenters will talk about these things, I don't want to hear, I want to be healthier. I don't want to hear, I want to make more money. I don't want to hear, I want to be a better father. What the hell do you mean? What exactly do you mean? Because the more clear you can get about what you want to do, for example, I want to make $50,000 more this year. I want to lose 20 more pounds in the next 60 days. I want to, instead of just being a great father, I want to coach my son's basketball team, whatever that looks like. The more clear you can be about your objectives, the more likely it is, and this is scientifically proven, the more likely it is that you'll actually produce the result that you desire. It's our lack of clarity that causes us confusion and moves us into doing nothing, right? Think about this for a second. You go into your closet and you've got 17,000 different items that you can wear. Does that make your selection of your wardrobe for the day easier or harder? It makes it harder because you have so many options. So let's get rid of the noise. Let's get rid of the nonsense. Let's start minimizing our choices so that we can make more effective ones and actually get to taking action. I read a quote from, I think it was, I don't know if Chris Williamson said this, Modern Wisdom podcast, or if he was quoting something, but he basically said something like, thinking about the thing isn't doing the thing. Talking about the thing isn't doing the thing. Planning to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Emailing or texting or calling your friends about doing the thing isn't doing the thing. Like, these are all the things that we think we're actually moving the needle. You're not. Even tonight, you're not doing the thing. I'm not saying this is bad, that you shouldn't be here, but let's make no qualms about it. You're not doing the thing tonight. You're learning what you can do, but there comes a point in time, and hopefully it's tonight or tomorrow morning, where you decide to take action on what you learned tonight. The only time you're doing the thing is when you're actually doing the thing. We need to take action, but we need to have the vision first, and then we need to be clear, crystal clear, exactly on what we want. Number 3, guys, is we're going to start looking at our assets and resources. There's things that you don't know. There's things that you need. It might be financial capital. It might mean information. It might be literally a tool that you need to be able to build a home, for example. But there's assets that you need. The greatest asset I would suggest to you is something that you're engaged in right now. It's other people. And this is the one that we often overlook. We don't think about engaging with other people. We don't think about enlisting other people. And you'll hear things. People will say, well, I just don't want to burden anybody. You're not burdening anybody by asking for help. That person wants to help you. Can you imagine? Imagine this for a second. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, Joe, I know you're really successful in business. Let's say this happens tonight. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, I've been following you. You're really successful in business, and I have a couple of questions for you. Does it cross your mind that you're like, you're kind of being a burden to me tonight? Of course, you would never say that. You wouldn't even think that. The only time you think that is when you need help, when you need to reach out to somebody. I don't want to burden people. I don't want to put them out. They want to serve you. Okay. You want to serve other people. It's safe to assume that other people want to serve you. If you're in the right audiences, and you are tonight, those individuals, they want to serve you, but they're not going to guess. You have to open your mouth and exhibit a little bit of courage and say, you know what? That guy knows what he's doing. That gal seems to have things figured out. I'm going to go talk with her. I'm going to go talk with him. I'm going to ask good, poignant questions so I can learn. And also, you're giving somebody an opportunity to serve. That was one of the biggest mind shifts for me, is that when I ask for help from other people, whether it's my buddy and asking him to help me move, or help with a business thing, or Ian asking me to present here, those are all opportunities for us to create moments where other people can serve. It's actually valuable to other people to ask them for their help. We don't often look at it like that, but who are you and who am I to rob somebody of the opportunity to serve another human being? And if you keep your mouth shut and you don't open it and you don't talk about what you're dealing with, and you don't ask for help when appropriate, you're robbing people of the opportunity to serve you. And you would appreciate that opportunity. It's safe to assume that they would as well. Guys, the last thing that I wanted to talk with you about as far as solutions is we have to be doing what I call an after action review. And what that means is that after every engagement, after every conversation, after every task, after every phone call, after every podcast, I'm going to do it after this presentation, is I'm going to go through and I'm going to ask myself 5 questions. 5 questions. Number 1, what did I accomplish? And I'm going to be very honest about that. Number 2, what did I not accomplish? So I set out to do this thing. Here's what I got done, but did I complete it fully? Number 3, in what ways did I do it well? So now we're talking about our strengths. How did I do this well? Number 4, what didn't I do well? What areas of can I improve upon? And how can I grow and get better? And number 5, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? So if you're doing an after action review at the end of the day and you've got your list of things, you can write down, you had 10 things and maybe you got 6 done, but you didn't do 4. You were really good on staying on task and staying on target. But to question number 4, there was a few people who you allowed to distract you and pull into your day that you shouldn't have. So tomorrow you're going to be a little bit more clear or aware of how little distractions are sucking time from your day. That would be an example of an after action review. But you're going to do that after every conversation, every task, every engagement, every hobby, every activity, every podcast, every phone call, every presentation. It's the only way to improve. If you're honest with what you did well, and you can be, by the way, some people will say, don't focus on that. No, you should focus on the things that you do well, but also remember that there's areas of improvement that you can have as well. That's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I hope that serves you. As I said, I didn't want to share that stuff with you, but it's important that I do. And I hope that you can see your own life, regardless of where you are on the timeline. You know, this was like D-Day for me, my divorce, right? And you might be past that, or you might be behind that, and that may not happen, or maybe you're in the throes of it right now. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know where you are. But I know that regardless of where you are on that timeline, if you implement these things, you look out for the pitfalls, you look out for the arrogance, the isolation, the stagnation, the burnout, the loss of meaning and purpose, and instead infuse into your life vision, execution, other people, assets, resources, and then constantly review your efforts, you're going to have a lot of success coming out of what you might be dealing with. So again, I appreciate you guys. If you want to send me an email, you can email me at ryan@orderofman.com. If I had more time with you guys, I don't, because I know we're trying to get to the next presenter. I would answer questions. But if you do have a question, ryan@orderofman.com. Clearly, I'm an open book, so don't feel like it's too sensitive to ask me. You can follow me on Instagram at Ryan Mickler, or follow us at orderofman.com. So again, I appreciate it. Again, I'm sorry that I could not be there, but I am really grateful that I got to participate. And I'm sure I'll see a lot of you guys on the coaching calls coming down the line as well. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.